This is our website here, and you can contact us on this email here. I will come back. I will show it again later in the presentation. But this website also has a lot of resources. And I point out to this menu. I'll come back to it again, where you can already find a lot of information about graduate school and how you can also apply to grad school. Okay. So that's the website. I've mentioned it already. Make sure you check the resources there. We provide really comprehensive and individualized mentorship to people who are trying to get to graduate school. And I'm going to also get to that in more details later on. We also are trying to set up these discussion forums where you can go in and ask questions to other folks in Afrisnet and get answers. Afrisnet is also now really spearheading a program where we try and seek research internships for African students. This is still very limited. I get a lot of questions of people asking me how they can participate. This is still going through universities that we partner with, but the goal is that hopefully the program can grow, expand, and reach out to more students. Okay. But if you are here, I get to know you and you get to know me, you get to know Peter and everyone else. And so the goal here is that we can also build a structured and organized network of people who are like-minded. If you are joining, please mute yourself. Okay. Apologize. It will take me a minute to get to these people who are coming in loud. And if you go to this Join Afrisnet menu, you can create an account. I want to say already here that as you create an account, there is also a specific question that asks you if you need help applying to graduate school. And once you answer yes to that question, you're already added to our list that we are going to consider for that year. So that's one way to get incorporated into the system. Okay. So we started this webinar series to present general information pertaining to research-based graduate programs. And we focus specifically on the graduate programs in the United States. And the reason why we do that is because, you know, the American leadership in research is evident. And so but also, they've really gone above and beyond in funding their research, which provides a lot of opportunities to graduate students, and we'll try and help as many Africans as possible to take advantage of those opportunities as well. And so we want to explain Afrisnet's graduate application mentorship program. That's today's webinar, so that's what I will spend a bit of time on. And we want to listen to you and answer your questions. We are not where you are right now. We are Africans. We've gone through what you are going through, but things change over time. We are not in your situation right now. And so we want to hear you. We want to hear your concerns and hopefully help address those concerns. Okay. Right. Okay. The goal is that we help you make an informed decision. You make the decisions. What we do is to try and support you, provide the information, and again, answer your questions based on our own experience. All the volunteers at Afrisnet are either graduate students or postdocs who have done research and really understand the steps that you are trying to take now as a prospective graduate student. And so in GIS 1, if you missed it, as I mentioned, we defined graduate school, trying to compare, for example, graduate school to undergraduate school. We focused again on these research-based graduate education programs in the United States. And we had a discussion where people asked questions and we were able to answer some. Unfortunately, we ran out of time, as it's always the case. But the hope is that we can schedule more of these meetings so we have time to answer more questions. So briefly, I picked a few points that I thought were important from the last session that might also be relevant for today's session that I want to briefly touch today. So what is graduate school, right? If you are in grad school, you're in an academic entity within a university that will hopefully award you a graduate degree, be it a master's or a doctorate, once you have fulfilled all the requirements for that program, right? So most people who go to grad school, they are preparing themselves for teaching or research or administration. But really, the objective is that you become an expert. You become a leader in either public or private sectors because you have taken that ample time to specialize yourself in a given topic through graduate school. And so just to bring back again the basic differences here, if you are an undergraduate student, what you are doing now is to acquire general knowledge in a much more broad sense, right? And so you may be measuring in civil engineering, and you will take a lot of general courses in engineering or in chemistry, if you will. But if you go to grad school, now your studies become more specific, more specialized within still a broad discipline. Okay. Pause here and check a few people who are in the waiting room. Okay. So you could go to a university, get a bachelor degree in civil engineering, and then go out and work, right, as an engineer. That's also true for some graduate degrees. So for example, somebody who goes to medical school, becomes a medical doctor and goes out to practice. But really what distinguishes graduate school, especially research-based graduate school, is that you want to build on previous knowledge and generate novel knowledge. So that's a very key difference here to keep in mind. In other words, when you go to grad school, you're not just trying to acquire information, but you're also working to generate novel information. Okay, so today we're going to break down this graduate school application process, and I'll try to go in as much detail as I can. But again, we can't really cover everything. The hope is that this introduction sort of gets you started on seeking out more information and hopefully points you to the resources that you can use to do so. I want to briefly discuss what you can do now to increase your graduate school admission chances wherever you are. How can you start preparing now, right? I will explain how we at Afrisnet can help. And of course, if you folks have any questions, and I'll be happy to help answer some. Okay. All right. And so if you are trying to go to graduate school, you need to know when you would apply, of course. And so this requires you to understand the American academic calendar. And so see here. Okay. Most American graduate programs, and I think a lot of also European programs are also aligned. Canadian programs might also be aligned. and I think really many programs around the world are try and follow this semester system. So what that means, if you are used to having 3 trimesters in a year, a semester system would have 2 major phases throughout the year, which are typically 4 to 5 months. One of them, at least here in the US, is what we call a fall semester. This semester would start in late August or early September and go until typically mid-December, right before the holidays. And then there is a short break for the holidays, which is then followed by the spring semester, which would start sometime in January and go until May. Some universities go until June. There are some universities that also define a summer semester that could go from May to August, but typically when you're in grad school, you will most likely not be taking courses during the summer. That doesn't mean you won't be registered, because research is also considered part of your sort of coursework, but you want to keep in mind these 2 main semesters, the fall semester and the spring semester, okay? And in most cases, graduate school would start in the fall, okay? So if you want to start graduate school in the fall of 2024, you would submit your application in fall 2023. So if there is anybody here on the call who was thinking about starting graduate school in the US this year as a PhD student, it's already late. You cannot apply now. What you can do now is prepare to apply in the fall of this year, 2023, so you can start graduate school in the fall of 2024. So it's a process that's going to take a whole year from the moment you apply to the moment you start school. Some programs have what's called a rolling admission. This is mostly the case for master's program. A few of them that will basically consider your application anytime. You can send in your application any time of the year, but in most cases, you will still start along this semester timeline. So that's also important. You have to distinguish admission from studying, right? So you may get admitted, for example, in early spring, like in February or March, but you actually wouldn't be able to start until, as I mentioned, the fall. Okay, so what's the timeline for the actual application process? And this is, in terms of preparation, you want to start now. What I'm doing on this slide is to sort of show you the sort of pivotal dates, the important dates or the times to keep in mind. So most graduate schools or graduate programs will have their deadlines sometime in late November until some go up to early February, like February 15th, for example. That's the window where you can submit your application. Now, what I write here does not apply to every program. You have to know the specific deadline for every specific program that you want to apply to. But most of the deadlines fall within this time window here in the United States. I believe also this is the case for some, if not most programs in Canada, and that might be the case also in some programs in Europe as well. And I think we're seeing more programs in China, even Australia, also sort of align with this academic calendar. Okay, and then in February until March, sometimes it could even be as early as January. You could get invited for an interview. So if your application is strong, typically you will be invited for an interview. And usually the decision whether you are accepted or not or put on a waiting list is going to come shortly after the interview. So it doesn't take a long time between the interview and the decision. And then in generally, in most programs, you have until April, typically April 15th, to accept or reject the offer. Okay, so that gives you enough time if you have multiple admissions to weigh your options and choose which schools you want to go to. For people who are coming in, if you could please mute yourself as you join, that would be great. And greatly appreciated. And again, I apologize as I take a few seconds to check on people who are still in the waiting room. And so, how do you find the right university? Right, this is a big question. So, internet is a good start. Start with Google or similar search engines. Okay. And so you could go to Google and, for example, search or type in PhD programs in electrical engineering in California. You get a lot of results that are going to pop up. Like any internet search, it's up to you to discern and decide which result is really helpful. But Google also has really done a great job, for example, and I think it's the same for Bing or other search engines, in sort of trying and give you most relevant results first, right? And then you would navigate the website. A university website is typically going to have an edu domain, as opposed to, for example, a .com domain name. And so you go to that website and eventually navigate to the specific graduate program website. I'm going to get to this. These university websites are pretty big and complex websites. And this is a good time to start practicing how to navigate through them. Once you go through a few of them, you find many similarities that help you to navigate through them very quickly. And the initial Google search may not directly give you specific universities. It may give you links to general databases that would rather give you a list of universities. And that's better because then you have a lot of them to look through. And I will get back on how you can use those databases later in the presentation. Okay. Oh, here they are actually. I've listed a few here. So databases like PhD Portal, this is from studyportals.com. If you don't know them, I think I recommend that you know who they are and maybe even create an account. They have databases that list, I believe the last time I checked, about 200,000 universities from all over the world. And I think if you sign up, they send you customized updates through a monthly newsletter, or I guess emails that sort of keep you informed based on the interest that you've indicated. And you can tell their system where you want to go, where you would like to go to study, or what you would like to study, and the system is going to track that and send you updates based on the interest that you've indicated. So they also have a master portal. I believe they also have a scholarship portal that will list many scholarships that are available all over the world. And so again, it's study portal. I should maybe put that in the chat later on so everybody can see it. Let's see. Study portals, I think, .com. Google that, look that up. Let me know if I got it wrong. We can correct it when we're still in the meeting. So say, hey, somebody's on the computer, please double check that and let me know. There is also topuniversities.com, US News, and many more. And so what these databases do is that they are going to give you a list of universities that may have graduate programs in your specific area of interest. Now, as you navigate through universities, beware of the program rankings. So I believe top universities in US News, for example, are more oriented towards ranking. And so what this means is that universities are ranked broadly, overall rankings, but actually specific programs also get ranked and compared to other similar programs at other universities. What do I mean by this? Let me give you an example. So Harvard University is, or Massachusetts Institute of Technology, or California Institute of Technology, Caltech, or for example, Oxford, right? These are universities that you hear often ranked, like top universities in the world. And so trying to find a person. If you're coming in, please mute yourself. Okay. All right, let's keep on. And so know how these rankings work, right? Because if I give you an example, Harvard may be the top university in the world overall, but Harvard is not the top university in the world in every single discipline, academic discipline, right? So you may find, for instance, that the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign may rank higher than Harvard in civil engineering, right? You may find that in some technology academic programs, Caltech may rank higher than Harvard, even though Harvard is the overall top university in the world, right? And so you need to know where the university ranks globally in the specific program that you are interested in. So if you go into databases like US News or top universities, or just go in Google, you can type or search for something like university rankings in biology, right? Or university ranking in electrical engineering. In that case, you get rankings that are specific to that area of interest that you are trying to get into, okay? Let's see. A few people in the waiting room, just a second here. Okay. So that's important to know, but also when you are looking for schools, use your connections, right? Use the Afrisnet mentors. If you are in the end assigned a mentor at Afrisnet, they can of course help you understand also these rankings. So you understand the strength of the programs that you are applying to. We always recommend that you apply to programs with different rankings. And so if you, for example, are trying to get into graduate school, let's say in biology, and you only apply to Harvard and MIT and Stanford and Berkeley and Oxford, right? Maybe the top 5 universities in the world, the chances that you will get an admission in that case might be lower, if any, because those top programs are going to also be, of course, very, very competitive, right? And so we get students sometimes who just go in and send their applications without being aware of the rankings and how sought after the programs that they're applying to are, and eventually they get no admissions and they are deceived, right? That being said, also anybody in the world could apply to Harvard and not get admitted. Anybody in the world could apply to MIT and not get admitted for one reason or another, right? And so the message here is that highly ranked programs are difficult to get in. They're much more competitive, and you would increase your chances by also targeting programs that are not ranked on the top of the bunch. And so where do you send your application? If you want to go to the University of Alabama or UT Southwestern Medical Center, or another university in Canada or China or Australia, where do you actually send your application? Your application is going to go to a specific graduate program within a university. And to break this down, I'll give you an example, my own example. I did my PhD at Indiana University in Bloomington. And so I applied to a program within Indiana University that is called GCDB, or Genome, Cell, and Developmental Biology. So within the Indiana University, there is the College of Arts and Sciences. I should actually also put here that there is also then the Department of Biology, which has three different graduate programs that you can apply to. Okay, so this means that if you are a biologist like me and you want to go to graduate school at Indiana University, you would need to be able to navigate to the GCDB website or the microbiology website or the EEB website at Indiana University, learn about the program and figure out how you apply and eventually get to their online application system, as I'm going to get to in a little bit. Okay, and so keep in mind that different programs within the same university may have different deadlines. So just because you might be applying to a few programs in the same university does not mean that they will all have the same deadline. It's also important to keep in mind that you should be careful when you want to apply to multiple programs within the same university. And the reason why I say this is because the word spreads, right? And so if you apply to biochemistry, for example, and then you go on and apply to chemistry or biology, if professors talk amongst themselves and realize that you're targeting both programs, depending on how you've structured your application. Now, if your application is the same, meaning your personal statement is the same, but you're targeting different programs, that may raise a red flag in a way that perhaps you have not really defined your interest just yet, right? That doesn't mean that you can apply to multiple programs in the same university. Just make sure that if the information crosses between programs, you can clearly show your interest independently in each one of those programs, okay? So here's an example. This is the website for the GCDB program at Indiana University, okay? So I already want to point out a few things on these websites that are going to come back in many of these websites, and also point out right now that these websites are going to be your primary sources of information. They contain a lot of information. In most cases, all the information you need is going to be here. They will tell you how to apply. They'll tell you if they have any financial support for their students. That information is going to be available here, and what have you. Okay, so take time to read. The one thing to understand is that graduate school applications take time, and you have to start early and be patient. But here you can read about the research, for example, in this research menu. This most likely, if you click on a menu like this, is going to tell you also who is doing research there. So faculty profiles, right? Here's another example from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign. And so this is a specific program in agricultural and biological engineering within the College of Agricultural, Consumer, and Environmental Sciences. Okay, so a big university is going to have a lot of academic subdivisions, and it's important to know where you are when you're seeking admission to a graduate program, right? And so again, here you see a menu that would take you to the research. So generally, they'll try to introduce you to the research that's going on in their program. There's a directory here. This may take you to the list of faculty, for example, who are doing research. They will tell you here if you want to do a master's, for example, or if you want to do a PhD, for example. There is a link that you can follow and get more information. Degree requirements means what you would need to complete to qualify for their graduate degrees, and so on and so forth, right? So again, these websites are going to be your primary sources of information. So it's important to familiarize yourself with them. Okay. Once again, for people who are joining now, I would appreciate it if you can mute your microphones, please. I'll keep checking the waiting room and let you in, but once you get in, please mute your microphone. That'd be helpful. Thank you. Okay, so in this example from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, so one thing you'll notice right away is that the website of every graduate program might be laid out differently. And although they tend to provide the same information, understandably, they may also give you, there may also be some differences in what information they provide and how they present it. So, Emmanuel, can you mute yourself, please? Okay, sorry about that. And so in this case, for the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, what they also provided is the information for this person here that I'm showing you. And this is very useful information. This is their graduate advisor. And so if you are trying to apply to this program, you definitely want to keep this information on file, especially this email, because this is the person you would be emailing for any questions pertaining to the programs, right? So you would really want to know who Heather is and get in touch with her and ask any questions you may have, right? Heather would be able to answer questions like, what is it to be a graduate student in Urbana-Champaign in Illinois? I'm from Ghana. I've never been to the United States. I'm from Ethiopia. I've never been to Illinois, right? Could you tell me more about your program? Of course, make sure when you contact these people that you are not asking for obvious information. What do I mean? If they've already provided you the information on the website, do your homework, right? Review the information and ask for questions about information that is not already provided on the website. But as you will see later, if you are actually entered into the Afrisnet mentorship program, we will ask you to find the equivalent of Heather in any graduate program that you are trying to apply to. For example, if you are trying to negotiate a fee waiver, an application fee waiver, this is the person you would contact. If your TOEFL or IELTS results are a little bit delayed or you take it a little bit late, this is the person you would contact, right? So they would be your primary point of contact. And so here's another example. This is the graduate program in Vision Science at the University of Alabama. Again, they have a link to research. They have a link to people. If you remember, the University of Illinois had a menu that was named directory instead of people, but most likely these would lead to the same thing, or we would get to see who is in the program and who is doing research there, right? They tell you what the requirements for admission in their program would be. And here they actually nicely also have a menu that would take you to the faculty who are doing in research in this program, and probably also tell you about which research every faculty is doing, which, as you will see later, is very important to know. And this is the time to start familiarizing yourself with who is doing which research where, if you are interested in going to that particular university. Okay, here's another example from the University of Illinois. The other website I showed you was from the, I think, the agricultural science program. In this case, this is computer science. So two different academic areas, two different websites. And they're going to, in this case, you notice they look a little bit different. They may provide different information. They may have different menus. So the key is that whichever program you're trying to get into, you need to take time to navigate these websites because they contain all the information you need. If not, you will find the contact information that you can reach out to with questions. Okay. So now I'm going back to that program at Indiana University, the GCDB program that I told you about. And what I want to tell you here is that you have the contact information here, as I mentioned, but you also have here on the right side, you have a link that would actually tell you how you would apply to this program, okay? So once again, you want to keep the contact information on file. And so if you're planning to apply to graduate school later this year, my advice right now is to start building the database for yourself, right? So like an Excel sheet where you enter all the information about different graduate programs that you are planning to apply to. If you're not sure which information to collect, please let me know. And I will be happy to share a spreadsheet that we use that will show you sort of which information we think is useful for you to start collecting at the moment. And so for most programs nowadays, the application is done online, which is really convenient and thanks to technology. You don't have to mail in your application material from Ethiopia to California or from Kenya to Toronto. These online application systems are very common now, and it's what most universities use. There's a well laid out, prepared portal where you go in and put in information and basically answer all the questions that they are going to ask you to provide. In most cases, you will have to create an account through this system, which then you can come back and log in. So the information you enter is typically saved over time. And so you can go in today and just put in your name and email address, so basic personal information, and maybe come back next week and start writing your personal statement. In most cases, you have the option to save the information, and then you can submit it anytime you want, most likely close to the deadline. There is no need to rush and submit an application early until you have it complete. But this is nice because then all the information you have is saved and you can come back to it and update it if something new happens. If you have something new on your CV, you can add it. It might be the case that you have to wait for some time. So what I'm saying here is that I'm not sure if for all programs, these systems are open all year long, right? It might be that maybe they open them in May or they open them in August, or they're always open. You can create an account and put in your information anytime you want. So again, you would have to familiarize yourself with these programs and visit their application system and see if they are open and create an account. Okay. So now let's get into what you need. What would a school or a program require you to submit? Keep in mind that these are generic lists that I'm providing. They may not be exhaustive. And so a specific program may also ask for more information than I've provided here, or they may ask for less, right? And so you want to provide all the information that is requested in the online application system, okay? Official transcripts. I have noted here that you don't need your final diploma. This is very important because a lot of students think that you have to complete your undergraduate and have your diploma before you can apply to graduate school. That is not the case. When I applied for PhD programs, I was in the actually last year of my undergraduate, before even the last semester. So I submitted my application during the second last semester of my bachelor's training. So you don't have to have your final diploma before you can submit your application, but they are going to ask for official transcripts. Some programs may even take unofficial transcripts for the application purposes. In most cases, once you are admitted, they will ask for the final diploma or the final transcript. In most cases, you'll also be required to write a personal statement or a statement of purpose. Submit your CV or resume. You will most likely be asked to also provide recommendation letters. So people who can speak on your behalf and really indicate your strengths as an applicant. If you are coming from a non-English speaking country, you will most likely be required to submit TOEFL or IELTS scores, and also an application fee, which can range anywhere between $50 to $200, depending on the program. Do not be discouraged by this application fee. I think in most cases, if you can indicate to the programs that you are not able to pay this fee, they will waive it if your application is strong. And a lot of programs have support systems in place to waive this fee for students who are otherwise unable to pay it. So learn how to negotiate through these applications. And if you want to negotiate, of course, you have to have the right contact information. So you're talking to the right people. The case of Heather at the University of Illinois that I showed you earlier, right? I also want to mention that the resources page on Afrisnet will provide you with tips on how to write these application documents. Like I believe we have some resources on the CV, or personal statement or statement of purpose, and many other resources that can help you. Okay, so I wanted to touch on a few application materials specifically to sort of give you some punch points that I think is good to keep in mind. So the first one is the personal statement. This document should describe who you are very briefly. So this is not a chronological a narrative of your entire life. You have to keep in mind that this is a professional and academic exercise that you are doing. And so you describe yourself as a person, but in the academic setting, right? And so I'm a third-year undergraduate student at the University of Cape Coast in Ghana, right? That might be sufficient because people reading your applications may not know exactly who you are and where you are coming from. So it's always good to recap briefly who you are in 2-3 sentences, or just a few sentences would be enough, right? Indicate your academic and career goals in this document. Of course, you want to mention the reason why you are applying to the specific program. This is important. If anybody is going to give you anything or offer you anything, they need to know why you need that thing, why that's going to be helpful to you, and why you need it, right? And so you have to touch on the qualifications that make you a strong candidate, right? Why are you a good fit for that particular program you are applying to? And what impact is the program training going to have on you in terms of your academic and professional goals, right? As you do this, focus on research, focus on academics. do not be philosophical, right? If your goal is to save your entire country from malaria, and you give a historical narrative and touch on your personal experiences to justify how you're going to do that, you are failing, right? A single person is not going to save an entire country from malaria, right? And so it's important to not just tell, but show specific examples that illustrate your qualification, that illustrate your motivation, and also that really show where your academic and career goals are stemming from. And so avoid grandiose languages that, like the example that I just told you. You want to learn, and you want to move your academic goals forward and attain them. You want to get engaged in research so you can become a researcher, and maybe become a professor or go work in industry. But you don't have to present yourself as the sole savior who is going to unravel and revolutionize the entire research industry in your country, right? So be careful, be humble, but be precise and advocate for yourself effectively, right? And as I'm going to touch on again, if you are in the Afrisnet mentorship program, one of the things we do heavily is to make sure that your personal statement is accurate. So we will help you proofread this document sentence by sentence, paragraph by paragraph. So I also want to talk about recommendation letters. These are important. And in some cases, students may feel like they don't really play a big role in the recommendation letters because you ask somebody to write it anyways, right? What else do you have to do? They are going to write the letter. That's not the case. You should be very involved in this process. Let me try to find that person. If you are just joining us, please mute yourself. That would be great. There you go. Okay. Again, for people who are just joining, as you get in the room, please mute yourself. That'll be very helpful. So who do you choose to write your recommendation letters? You want people who know you, right? Who know you well and can show that they know you for a long time. And choose people that you worked with in either authority or senior position relative to you. And so don't just, choose you can't really use a classmate to write a recommendation letter for you, right? You want somebody who is in a supervisor position from where you are now. If you are a student, for example, a professor would be appropriate, or a lecturer, right? If you've worked before, you've had a job, your manager could write a recommendation letter for you. But again, this is an academic offer that you are going for. So make sure that whoever is writing your recommendation letters can also write on your behalf in the academic sense. So speak about your academic and research qualifications. If you don't have a lot of academic mentors or research mentors, I think anybody who can speak on your behalf as a person who is motivated, who works hard, or that is going to be helpful in the end. But it's important that you select primarily your people in your academic and research arenas. Okay, you want to take time and explain to these people where you are applying and why you are applying. Tell them what your goals are, right? Not just a link to the program, not just an email that says, I've provided your name, just in case. If you get an email to write a recommendation letter, please do so. Talk to them ahead of time, right? In fact, if you are planning to apply in the fall this year, this is probably a good time to start talking to these people. let them know you are thinking about applying. And as I'm going to come back to, speaking to people who are, for example, doing research with you now may even help you define your own research goals, right? Share with them the websites to the programs that you are applying to. You have to be sure that the understanding you have about the program is the same that these people have. So what you write, of course, is in harmony with what they are going to write, because in the end, you are all trying to get to the same thing, right? Um, keep in mind that these people are very busy. So anything you do to help them get the information they need to write you a good recommendation letter is going to help you in the end. So allow ample time. Really, you may not be the only student that is asking this person to write recommendation letters for them. So it's important that you give them plenty of time to write your recommendation letter. And so again, I don't think it can be too early to start reaching out to these people. And I cannot emphasize enough how important this is. If you go late, they may feel like they eventually have to write that letter for you. Most likely they're not going to say no if they really care about you, but you don't want somebody to write your recommendation letters at 10 p.m. when the deadline is at midnight, right? You don't want somebody to really speak on your behalf convincingly in a matter of 1 hour or 30 minutes. You want to give them many days, many weeks, many months to think about your process, your applications, and keep reminders going their way, right? Keep reminding them about your applications. Gently keep reminding them of the deadlines and your application so they don't forget about it. And so this is very important, right? An effective recommendation letter does not just show, it should tell with specific examples. I want to start with this and go through this list here, right? The letter should state in what capacity the referee has known you and for how long. And so if it's somebody who was a lecturer in a specific course that you've taken as an undergraduate student, that should be clearly stated in the letter, right? It's important to provide comparative examples to illustrate your outstanding qualifications and achievements. In other words, a statement in your recommendation letter that just says, Rebecca is a fantastic student, that statement does not really cut it. Rebecca is a fantastic student relative to whom? Compared to whom, right? A better statement may say, Rebecca is in the top 1% of our students, right? So that might be a more convincing statement because it provides that comparative aspect to your qualifications. It means you are doing better than 99% of the students in your department, okay? Rebecca, when you come back in, please mute yourself. Thank you. Okay. So I ask these people to provide the details. Again, you're going to have access to this recording anytime you want it. It's going to be posted on YouTube. You can come back and look at it. And when you send that email asking for somebody to write a recommendation letter for you, make sure that you tell them or gently, right? You don't want to enforce yourself onto them on how to write. They know how to write. They are professors and lecturers after all. But it doesn't hurt to sort of nudge them and give them some pointers that you think will be helpful on your behalf. Some of them may be straightforward and open and actually show you these letters, right? And so that would be a moment for you to point out what you think needs to be added to the letters. In some cases, schools may mandate that you do not see your recommendation letters. So they have to be blind. In that case, you won't see the letters themselves, but you can still provide useful information and point out to things like what I'm saying here to help your referee write a strong letter for you. And of course, also, you are a student, but know the strength of who is writing your recommendation letter. If your recommendation letter is coming from a professor who's been teaching and writing recommendation letters for the past 20 years, and they've helped a lot of students get into graduate school, then most likely you don't have to say a lot to them, right? But if you are working with somebody who started university teaching last year, or who is still doing their master's, and they are still a junior lecturer, you may need to provide more information. What I mean here is that you have to be proactive. You are your own advocate, and you have to make sure that people who are helping you are helping you in the right way, in the most effective way for you to achieve your goals, right? If I am writing on behalf of a student and I want them to really get into graduate school, it's important for me to show that I understand their goals, right? That I know why they want to go to graduate school. And of course, I have to show that they will be successful, right? And again, I'm using the word to show explicitly. It's not just telling, it's showing. I believe that Peter is going to be an excellent graduate student in your program, because when I did research with him as my research assistant, he was very successful and very productive in research. For example, he did A, B, C, D, and in a very short period of time, he produced X, Y, Z, right? We've published together, right? He's written a manuscript from his research, very specific examples. And so this person is trying to convince someone else that you are good, right? But they are also trying to convince this person that you need to get into their graduate program in order for you to achieve your academic goals and also contribute to that program, right? And so all these needs to be indicated in that letter, and again, supported by specific examples, okay? I'm not giving this presentation to the people who would be writing the recommendation letters. So keep this in mind. It's up to you to make sure that not only you get the right people to write your recommendation letters, but also that your recommendation letters are strong, okay? So what would make you a strong applicant? And I tried to here distinguish master's and PhD, although in my mind, there is really one major distinction, and I'll point to it. Either way, you need a good grade point average, okay? So you need to do well in your courses. So if you feel right now like your GPA is a little bit low and you are planning to apply to graduate school, it's important that you work really hard to raise that GPA. Most generally, the cap might be at 3.00 over 4. Don't worry if this is not the scale that you use. Your grades can be converted. But some programs may go as high as 3.5 and above, okay? Again, depending on how competitive the program is. But in general, keep your grades high as you can. That will help, right? Your GPA is kind of like your handshake when you're applying to graduate school. If you don't have a good grade, it's going to be really hard. You can justify why you have a low grade if they are understandable circumstances that have affected your performance as a student. But if you can avoid to go there by keeping your grade high, that's always the best option. So if you have 2.7 now or 2.9. I don't want you to feel like this is the end of the world. But I really hope that you have a good justification as to why your grade might have dropped, right? So for masters, you may not be required to have extensive research experience, but it's definitely going to be a huge strength to show if you have some practical laboratory experience, right? Be it from the courses that you've taken or any other project that you've participated in. You must prove your motivation. And so it's not enough to come across and say, I'm a highly motivated individual, self-driven. Some students have really, really beautiful sentences on the top of their CVs. I'm a self-driven, zealous, hardworking, motivated person, aspiring researcher. Beautiful, good to say, but it's not enough. You have to prove it. And you prove that by using things on your CV that you've done that show you that you are motivated. For example, did you go beyond your traditional curriculum to engage in a research project or a community project, volunteering project, outreach project beyond your traditional courses, right? Did you go above and beyond and maybe took a course on Coursera, right? Did you learn a new coding language that was not required in your traditional curriculum, right? Did you engage in other activities on your campus that were not maybe required? Again, this could be something like starting a journal club, leading a club on your campus, engaging in a research project with a professor or a lecturer at your school that was not required in your coursework. So what really shows that you are motivated, and you want to try and get to those activities that were self-initiated to prove your motivation. Okay. Yes, I can hear. All right. So your personal statement has to be well written, of course. I've already talked about what you need to include in this document. And as I mentioned, if you are in our mentorship program, we are going to guide you on how to write this document. You need strong recommendation letters. And of course, if English is not a primary language in your country, you also need not necessarily the primary, but spoken language or the academic language in your country. You need to show that you have English proficiency through standard tests. For a PhD, again, you need a good grade. But most importantly, nowadays, it's really, really hard to get into a PhD program without research experience. And so I'm going to come back to this and tell you that wherever you are now, the best thing you can do is to start seeking research experience by all means, okay? Just because I'm also tracking the people in the waiting room, I'm really not checking the chat, so don't feel like I've ignored you if you sent a message in the chat. I'm going to give you time in the end to ask your questions. If you have other important things, and I think somebody was asking for permission to leave, that's okay. Again, this meeting is being recorded. So again, you need to prove your motivation, right? And what motivates you for a master's should be somewhat different for what motivates you for a PhD, right? A PhD is much more demanding than a master's, so you need to show that you are even much more motivated to engage in a coursework and research, for 4 to 6 years if you want to pursue a PhD, right? Your statement has to be well written. You need strong recommendation letters, of course, in English proficiency if you're coming from a non-English speaking country. Who reads your applications? This is very important. When you submit an application, it gets reviewed typically by a team of actual research professors who are on an admission committee. And this committee is gathered every year. And so people who are on that committee in a specific program may not necessarily be the same people the next year and beyond. But I wanted you to keep a few things in mind. These people receive hundreds, depending on the program, even thousands of applications. So you have to make your application unique and memorable. It has to stand out of that huge pool if you want to stand a chance. Again, if we mentor you, we will tell you how you can do that based on your qualifications, right? Keep in mind, these professors are very, very busy. They are doing research, they are teaching, they have to grade student assignments, they have to attend meetings, they have family, they have life outside their labs. They may even have some administrative functions that they also have to fulfill at their universities. What this means is that they don't have a lot of time to read your application. And so jumping to this last point right away, you have to capture their attention and you have to do so early in your statement, right? And so your CV might be similar to other CVs that they've seen, but where they really get to learn about you is in your personal statement. And so that's really where you capture their attention and hook them onto your application. These people are working on a very tight schedule. And so in some cases, if your applications are due on December 1st, these people actually may need to make a decision on who to invite for an interview before Christmas or before they start their winter break, which is around December 15th, so mid-December. That means they may have only 2 weeks to read hundreds of applications, right? Again, the message being they don't have a lot of time to spend on your application. And keep in mind, they do not know you and they don't have time to guess who you are, right? What you write is all they know about you. So you are your own advocate and you are trying to convince somebody who is very busy and who is reading many applications that might be similar to yours, right? So avoid anything that would make somebody trash your application after reading it for 5 minutes, but also do everything that will make your application stand out. This is very important to know. And I think if we can, we are going to try and invite professors who have served on admission committees on a panel here through these webinars, so you can actually get to hear from them directly, as well as other students who have applied. Now, if you are invited to an interview, this is a huge step. It really means that your application is good and you have a chance at getting admitted, unless you make a major faux pas or a major mistake during the interview. Okay, so I've heard a lot of things when I was applying myself and from professors who have served on admission committees here in the United States. And what most people say is that really when you are invited for an interview, the position is yours to lose. In other words, the school can and is ready to take you unless you mess up, big deal, during the interview. And again, if you are in the Afrisnet mentorship, we are going to coach you on how to prepare for this interview. I think in some cases, we may even provide mock interviews, because keep in mind, we've all taken these interviews. We know which questions they are going to ask you. We know the best ways to answer them. We are not going to ask you to make up things that you have done. We are going to help you make the best case of your situation based on the qualifications that you already have. We don't want you to lose the chance simply because you're not familiar with, communicating with an American professor when you are in Rwanda or Uganda. But in general, you want to prepare and familiarize yourself with technology. If you are in Africa, chances are you're not going to be invited for a physical visit to the campus. Chances are you're going to be invited for a virtual interview. Review your application documents. What did you write in your personal statement, right? If I am interviewing you and I ask you a question about something that you've stated in your personal statement, and you look at me like a deer in the headlights, like you don't know what I'm talking about, then I'm really concerned, right? Same thing on your CV. Know everything you've mentioned on your CV inside out, right? So this is not just memorizing your CV, but it's also having a comprehensive understanding of what you've done. Why did you do it? Where did you do it, right? What else could you have done, right? Why did you choose to do what you did as opposed to, for example, something else you could have done, right? Know who you will speak with. In most cases, you're going to receive a list of one or a few professors that you're going to speak with during this virtual interview. And so visit their lab websites, know which research they do, right? Know where they went to school, right? Where did they do their PhD? Where did they do their undergraduate training? Is it a senior or a junior faculty, right? All these interesting facts that you get to know about a person will help you be comfortable when you are talking to them. The more you know a person, the more comfortable you are when you are talking to them. If it's a new face that just pops up on your screen, most likely it's going to be a new face. You've never seen them before, but you're familiar with their work. You're familiar with their research. You know their profile, right? But the more you know about them, the better questions you can ask also. So be ready to engage, right? But you're not going to engage with somebody you don't know. Another reason why you really need to do your homework to get to know the person that you are going to be speaking with during this interview, okay? So perhaps the best advice I can give you about this interview is that you need to relax, be you. After all, you are having a conversation. And it's important to keep in mind that these interviews are a two-way conversation, right? They are trying to get to know you and really be sure that you are fit for their program. But at the same time, they're trying to lure you into their program. They're trying to sell their program to you because they need students, right? So they cannot do their research unless they have graduate students, and they need strong graduate students like you. They've invited you because they think you'd be a good addition to their program, right? So know your value. They are also trying to date you, if you will. They're trying to really show the best of their program so they can attract you to their program. In that sense, take time to listen carefully to what they are telling you. When I was interviewing for my PhD position, there are professors that I met with, and I kid you not, all I got to say about myself was my name and where I was coming from. And for 30 minutes, these people went on telling me about themselves and their research and the campus and their graduate program, right? As if that becomes the case, sit down, listen, ask good questions. You don't have to now take a blank canvas and paint yourself on it, right? If they're not asking questions about you, maybe they've already read your CV and they think you're good enough, then they don't need to waste more time there. They just want to sell the program so you can really, really, really decide to join their program because they think you're that good, right? Keep in mind, you might also be speaking to somebody who really, really, really needs graduate students in their lab, and their mission is to try and convince students that they are a good researcher. So if you are admitted, you end up joining their lab. I hope you follow me here. This is a very nuanced exercise. And so you, again, know who you are speaking to, right? If you are speaking to a professor who has written on their lab website very clearly that they are looking for graduate students, and that's the person you need to get attention to if the research they are doing happens to be in your area of interest, okay? But again, how you perform in this interview is really the dot on the I. That's the final exercise that eventually determines whether or not you get admitted. So it's important to prepare. And so now let me briefly talk about the Afrisnet graduate application guidance. What is this, and how do we specifically actually guide you? So first of all, there are so many students who need this guidance. And unfortunately, we cannot mentor everybody. And so we have to narrow down based on our capacity. So you must be an African student and you must be in STEM. If you are not in STEM, I'm pretty sure our website resources will still be useful to you if you read them. And most of the things I've presented in this meeting will probably still be applicable to you in terms of writing your application documents and getting ready for interviews and what have you. You don't have to apply to the US for us to mentor you. You can apply anywhere you want in the world, right? I've mentored students who have gone to Europe. I've mentored students who are in Canada. I've mentored students who are in China. And many other mentors as well have mentored students who have really gone all over the world. Even some have stayed in Africa, right? You might be applying for a master's or a PhD. Really, our goal is to provide you with a professional and strategic mentorship, regardless of the graduate program that you are applying to. And so whether you actually get admission or not, this mentorship becomes something that could help you for the rest of your life. You're going to learn how to write, how to communicate professionally, and it's going to be a good moment to really dig into your qualification and question and criticize and describe your qualifications and achievements in a way that will eventually show you the right path that you need to take if you are trying to get to graduate school. Okay, so you will be assigned a dedicated mentor who will help you individually. This is what we always try and do. If we have many people to mentor, we may do something like a workshop where we invite many people and work with them at the same time. But in most cases, you will be assigned a mentor who will be dedicated to you individually, who is going to be communicating with you directly, mostly through emails or WhatsApp. Every mentor, of course, has the freedom to mentor you and communicate with you in a style that works best for them, but they will be dedicated to you most likely. We'll give you advice on school selection. For example, if you only want to apply to highly ranked universities, we may advise you to consider some lower ranking programs depending on your qualifications. At the same time, if we think you are a very strong candidate based on your qualifications, we may advise you to consider some higher ranking programs as well, okay? We've seen students that Afrisnet has mentored get into Harvard. We've seen them get into the University of Southern California. We've seen them get into really, really competitive programs. So the hope is that Afrisnet mentors have a better understanding of the ranking of these programs. Rodina, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. One second. Sorry about that. Okay. So you also receive regular reminders. It's like you're working on your application with someone else who is there and watching you what you're doing and trying to guide you. So if I know you need to take your TOEFL to apply, I'm going to keep sending you emails and asking you if you've taken your TOEFL. So I'm going to be there like a companion to sort of remind you what you need to do. Of course, we ask that you do your homework, you diligently finish your duties to make things easier for the mentor who is guiding you. But I think having them there as somebody who can remind you and keep you on track can be really, really helpful. As I mentioned, we will help proofread your document. This is very important. If there is one thing that could make or break your application, it's your personal statement. If you can't write a good personal statement, that might be sufficient to get a denial, even if you have research experience. And so we'll help you proofread this document and make sure that it's as strong as it can be, but we do not write this document for you. You have to keep that in mind. What do I mean here? If you send me a draft, I'm going to indicate you, based on the audience that you're writing to, I think you should write A, B, C, D. I think you should change this paragraph. I think you are missing some important elements that you've indicated on your CV that you should include in this essay. Or I think the way you're describing your research experience is not accurate enough for a professor who is in the US or in Canada to understand. I may tell you things like that. Now, if you do not update your draft based on my suggestions, that is really up to you. All I'm giving you is a suggestion. You may take it or refuse it. If you do not follow my guidelines, then I'm not going to force you, right? So what that means, we are not going to babysit you. So know that ahead of time, right? If you can't keep up with our guidance, then you will be dropped very quickly, because instead of wasting time on somebody who is not motivated, I would rather put them aside and pick someone else who is highly motivated and could actually benefit from this guidance. We have done everything possible to make sure that you do not pay for this mentorship. I can tell you, people pay thousands of dollars for similar mentorship elsewhere. We know you do not have that money, or it might be very difficult for you to find that money. And so we do not want really smart students to lose this chance simply because they are financially limited. But keep in mind that you are being mentored by people who are volunteering their time, and sometimes a lot of time, because I might be mentoring 10 students at the same time. And so you're not the only student I'm helping. And so the only thing that's going to make this process successful and effective is really going to be your engagement. Okay. But again, you are responsible for your application. So we suggest you things, you take them or you don't. That's really up to you, right? We teach you how to communicate with graduate programs, right? And so all of you are mature, you are strong students, but you may have never been in a session where somebody teaches you how to write a professional email, right? And I've heard cases where writing a bad email might be enough for a professor not to respond to you at all, okay? Or the graduate advisor header that I showed you, they may not respond to your email simply because your email is not well written, or maybe you say things that you shouldn't say, or you leave out important things that you should have said, right? So whether you're communicating with research professors or graduate programs, we can help guide you on how to do that, right? So we are really in this journey together in that case. And of course, we help you prepare for your interviews, as I already mentioned. And if necessary, we may give you a mock interview where we ask you actually questions that we think they are going to ask, and have you answer them. And this has sometimes been really the best exercise to do with the students, because it already helps them be confident and less nervous, as they know somewhat what to expect. Doesn't mean that we're going to get every question 100%, but this is a conversation that you may not have ever had, right? If somebody is here in the United States, they may have a sibling, a relative, a cousin who's gone to graduate school and they've taught them how to prepare. But if you are if you are the first generation in college in your family, then you may not have a similar opportunity, and we want to make sure that that does not become the limitation for you. Okay. So how do you get into this mentorship program? As I mentioned already, if you've not registered on our website, please do so. And as you register, answer yes to this question if you need guidance. There is more questions you have to answer, things like where you are now. So tell us where you are in training, in your, for example, undergraduate degree. Once you've answered yes to this question, you will go on our radar. We'll follow up with you. We'll add you to the list of the students that we're going to mentor. And so attending the GIS webinars is one way to also be given priority for this mentorship. You can also contact Afrisnet directly. So here's our email, right? If you have a lot of qualifications, you've done a lot of research, and you feel like I'm really, really ready, I just want these people to know who I am so they can give me the best mentorship possible, you can always send us an email. Likewise, if you feel like you have a really, really good grade, but you've been limited in research, you can also shoot an email and we may give you one or two advice points that can help you, right? In many cases, if we have too many applicants, which is always the case, we may do an initial screening. This will be a very simple exercise, something like write a 500-word essay and tell us why you want to go to graduate school, for example. What we want to do here is we want to know that you are really committed. Somebody in the chat asked what GIS webinars are. These are graduate information session webinars that we do at Afrisnet. So if you are in this meeting, you are actually in a GIS webinar, and this is GIS 2. Welcome. And so we've had students in the past that we are trying to mentor, and they don't even respond to our initial email. So you send somebody an email, hello, my name is so-and-so, I'm your assigned Afrisnet mentor, and silence. They never respond, right? So that's very discouraging, and we want to eliminate that through this initial screening, right? Because we know that there are a lot of people who are just gonna say yes because they think they need help, but are they really ready, right? And so one benefit of being mentored by Afrisnet is that once you are admitted into graduate school, you will get inducted into the Afrisnet graduate community. So you'll join this network of African students who are doing PhDs literally all over the world. And you get to network with them and get to know them and really pursue your PhD in communications with these people. This mentorship, this community also is a way for Afrisnet to provide ongoing mentorship to ensure your success during and after graduate school, right? And so, for example, what do you do after you graduate with your PhD in Germany versus the US versus China, right? So if you are networking with people who have gone to school in those places before you, then you may get a tip or two. But we also organize a lot of events to help these students. So for example, the picture that you're seeing here, Professor Sonny Lacefield, who is a research professor at Dartmouth College, she was still at IU at the time. In this case, she was giving a lecture to the AGC students where she was telling them about how to develop an effective relationship with your PhD advisor, right? And so we also want to help our students integrate into the wider scientific community so they can know what opportunities and challenges are out there and how they can navigate those. So you need to get ready if you are planning to apply to graduate school. What could you be doing now to get ready, right? So I've already, I think, kind of alluded to this. You need to seek research experience by all means. I cannot overstate this. If there is a research laboratory on your campus that is somehow related to your field of study, it doesn't matter who is in that lab. It doesn't matter who is leading the lab. Get yourself in that lab. Whatever it takes, get yourself in that lab. Be as aggressive as you can. Be as consistent as you can. Make sure you get your feet and hands into that lab and do some experiments. It may not be directly related to what you want to do in your PhD. It does not matter. What you need is research experience. So when I was an undergraduate student, I did some research internship at MIT, and I was doing research in cancer using mammalian cell models, but my PhD was actually in basic cell biology using budding yeast as a model system. So I was still in cell biology, if you will, because cancer research is often also cell biology research, but these were two different research models, right? And so you might have research experience in biochemistry, even if you feel like you want to go to and do a PhD in cell biology. That's okay. Get your hands wet in a lab. That's really what you need. Nowadays, it's very, very difficult to get admission in a PhD program without any research experience. If you are seeking a master's, this will still be highly relevant and very helpful. And if you do not get research experience, you want to go to a master's, at least have some practical laboratory experience. Okay? And it's obvious why a PhD program would have this as a requirement, of course, right? If you are trying to get into a research-based program, it's important that you know what research is. Now, I'm with you. I hear you. I know most of you are on campuses where you really don't have access to research. I wish I had a magic wand that I could use to change that for you. And believe me, I really feel you. And as I mentioned, Afrisnet is trying to start internship programs, but they're still very small. But try, look around, look even beyond your campus. What else is in Addis Ababa? What else is in Kigali or in Huye? What else is in Nairobi? What else is in Accra? What else is in Lagos? Wherever you are, right? What else is in Kampala? Is there a private research company there that you could knock on their doors and ask if they can let you come and work a few hours a week? Even if you have to volunteer, even if you're not going to be paid, go there and do it, right? It's going to make a huge difference on your CV and your professional and academic development. So familiarize yourself with graduate programs in your country of interest. So not where you are necessarily, but where you want to go for graduate school. So start learning about different research areas. And so, for example, if you want to go to the GCDB program, Indiana University that I went to, what research is done in that program, right? And so know the admission requirements. You want to start to do this now, okay? I cannot emphasize that enough either. It's very important because as you've already noticed in the few examples I've given you, these websites are quite large. There's a lot of information to navigate through. So starting early is only going to be helpful for you, right? Know about the competition. Applying to a program in computer science at Caltech is probably going to be more competitive than applying to a computer science program at KNUST in Ghana, or another university in the United States, or because Caltech might be the top university in technology in the world, right? But you need to know that if you are planning to apply to Caltech. Familiarize yourself with this program website and be able to find the contact information there. So it's important also now that you start making a list of the programs that you feel like you're going to apply to, narrow down your interest so you can dig deeper into the programs that you are most interested in, and be strategic. There is a lot of information. There's a lot of programs to look through. So it's important that you have a system to work through. Otherwise, you will not have enough time. Contact those graduate advisors with general questions. So contact Heather if you want to go to Illinois and ask her general questions about their graduate program, right? This is also very important. Define your research interests and then identify research professors who are doing research in those areas, okay? So I will touch on how you can define your research interest in a little bit. When you identify these research professors, for example, you find that Dr. Lacefield at Dartmouth, who is doing research in meiosis using mouse oocytes and budding yeast as a model, is doing research that is really, really interesting to you. Make note of her, learn more about her research, read her publications. But this may not be the best time to reach out. And the reason why I say that is because if the deadline is in December at Dartmouth, it's still too early. And remember, Professor Lacefield is incredibly busy. So if she sees your email now, she may simply say, please apply through this program if you are interested, right? She may not even respond because she feels like it's too early, right? It's good to reach out maybe later in the summer when these professors themselves are starting to think about graduate applications, right? Now, if you email a professor and they respond, by all means, engage in that conversation. It's going to be helpful for you. And again, keep in mind, if you don't know where to begin, when you're trying to email a professor, we are here to help, honestly. Send that email to me or someone else at Afrisnet. We'll tell you what we think about it, right? We're not going to write it for you again, but we know that you don't communicate with these professors on a daily basis. So it's important that somebody helps define this audience for you so your communication is on point and appropriate. And so again, look out for and attend future Afrisnet webinars. We're going to talk more about these topics. And so how do you define your research interest? Maybe you are a third year at Addis Ababa University in microbiology. You've never done research. You've never been in a research laboratory beyond your laboratory courses. And you're just saying, I want to do a PhD in applied microbiology because you happen to be in the applied microbiology program. But how do you really define your research interest? How can you speak to a professor and convince them that you are interested in the research that they are doing, right? So if somebody who is not muted, can you please mute yourself wherever you are? I'm not finding you quickly here on the list. Everybody, please mute yourselves. Thank you. Okay. So it's a process, right? Let's see if I can find this person. There we go. But as everything else you do in your life, start with what you have. Understand the value of what you are, what you have, and who you are, and where you are now, right? which undergraduate courses or master's courses, if you have a master's, did you enjoy the most? Right? Is there a lab session that you went to and you were like, this is cool. I would like to do this for the rest of my life. But be detailed and specific, right? If you took a course in microbiology and you were very, very, very enlightened and inspired, what really interested you in that course? Is it when you were learning about the cell membrane of bacteria? Is it when they talked about how bacteria divide? Or was it about when they were talking about peptidoglycan or antibiotic resistance, right? Which topic in microbiology was really, really interesting to you? And so if you say, I'm interested in microbiology, that's not enough. If you are interested in biochemistry and you are really blown away in one biochemistry course, be specific and detailed. What was really interesting to you, right? Was it when you got to do some biochemistry research techniques? I don't know, maybe you ran a Western blot in the lab and you were really having fun. And or was it when you were trying to decipher the crystal structure of a specific protein, right? Was it, sorry, there we go. Was it about when you were learning about the biochemistry of DNA or the biochemistry of proteins, right? If you are in civil engineering, did you enjoy your surveying course or your pavement course? What really attracted you the most? Where did you feel like you were having fun and you want to do that a lot more, right? Start from there. And again, as I mentioned, I'm not going to be able to answer specific questions in the chat for the interest of time, and because I'm also not monitoring the waiting room, but I will give you time to ask questions and touch on the ones you have in the chat. Don't worry. Okay. So also think about your lecturers and your professors, right? Is there somebody that you look at and you want to be like them, right? I had one such professor in my undergraduate training, a guy from Trinidad. His name is Dr. Bideshi Dennis. I'm always proud to speak about this guy. Amazingly brilliant guy, and he was doing a lot of research at the time. And when I asked if I could do something research related with him, he immediately took me in, and I just wanted to be as smart as he was. I'm not, right? He's way smarter, but he was very inspiring to me, right? So is there somebody like that, a professor that you really want to look up to? If that's the case, make sure you talk to them. Let them know that you want to go to graduate school. Ask them how you can really, really know what you're interested in, right? Seek advice. Ask them if they could let you work with them in their research. Tell them that you're not looking for money. You don't need to be paid. You just need to get some experience, right? And as you are doing this exploration, think wider. There might be things related to your interest that you've never come across, right? And how do you expand your interest? You can do three things. Number one, read. Number two, read. And number three, read. You cannot read enough if you are an aspiring lecturer. An aspiring researcher, sorry. And so read publications. When you read publications, you do not only learn about research and new research findings, but you also learn about how research is done. In addition to that, publications that relate to your area of interest will also help you define your research interests. Okay? When you see experiments that other people are doing that could inform you about the experiments that you may want to do yourself. Okay? Bash, can you mute yourself, please? Somebody named Bash, can you hear me? Please mute yourself, otherwise I will have to remove you from the meeting. Bash? Okay. I'm gonna send you back to the waiting room. So I've mentioned a few engines here that you can use to find research publications. There is Google Scholar, some of you might be familiar, and this is a very cool database that is owned by Google, where they sort of build profiles of different researchers. And so you could go in and type in Professor Sonny Lacefield that I mentioned, for example, and you're going to see a list of all the publications that she's put out. And in some cases, you may have links that will actually take you to the full text publications. And I want to hear from you after this webinar. If you want me to do a webinar specific for scientific literature and show you how to read a research publication effectively and quickly, I will be very happy to prepare a webinar like that. So just let me know if that is something you would like, put it in the chat or talk to me when we're done in our discussion, and I'll be happy to have a webinar like that, okay? There's also PubMed. PubMed is actually managed by the US government, and it's a huge database. So you can go there. These are mostly life sciences publications, but there is a lot of publications that are available in full text, meaning you can have access to the entire publications besides just the abstract, and read the results, read the introduction, read the methods. And I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna ask you at the end to raise your hands, and when I'm done with the presentation, you can also open your cameras and we can have an open discussion. But actually, I'm curious to see how many of you have read actual research publications before. Recently, I also learned about Engineering Village. So these are publications in engineering. And also there's something called GeoBase. There is also ResearchGate. And I'm pretty sure I'm mentioning only a few. There is probably more that I'm not mentioning that I may not even be aware of, right? But if you don't know where to start, reach out to your lecturers, those folks who have PhDs and masters, right? Ask them where they get publications to read and how they get access to them, right? That would be a good start. So as you do try to define your research interest, what you want to do is build a documented, detailed, and trackable research portfolio, no matter how small it is. What do I mean by this? Maybe you volunteered at a hospital and you were in the laboratory, and what you were doing was to take urine samples from people and plating them on agar plates to see if they have any bacterial infections. Perfect. Document that. How long were you at that hospital? How many laboratory sessions did you have? How many plates did you do, right? Which bacteria did you identify? How did you identify them, right? And so that has to be detailed. And now is the time to start doing that, right? If you've never ever been in a laboratory for research purposes, maybe you've had some practicum courses or sessions in your senior coursework, right? What did you do there? Maybe you did some gram staining to identify bacteria, right? Anything practical, anything in a laboratory setting that you've done can be put in this portfolio. And this, in the end, is going to be a guide for you. And so once you have this guide, when it comes time to write your applications, it's going to be very easy. And if you share this portfolio with the Afrisnet mentor who is guiding you, then it's going to make their life a lot easier because they'll get to know you better and what you've done, which means they'll guide you even more effectively. Okay, so that brings me to the end of my slides. This was a long presentation. I did warn you about it ahead of time because there were a lot of details to cover. Hopefully it was helpful. So I am going to stop sharing now. The meeting is still being recorded. Keep that in mind. And as I said, it will go on YouTube, so it will be public. I had Bash sent back to the waiting room. Bash, I'm going to bring you back in, but please mute yourself. And so now it's
Gabriel,
time.
that was a comprehensive presentation, Gabriel.
Oh,
thank you very much.
Thank you, Peter. Hopefully, it was helpful.
Yeah.
I've seen Matthias raise a hand. And those of you saying thank you, you are very welcome. It's really my pleasure to do this. And as you ask your questions, I will also try to go in the chat and see if I can answer some of the questions. Okay, and if I don't talk about your comment in the chat, that probably means I know the answer is going to be provided to you. So for example, if someone is asking if they can have a recording of the presentation, of course, I've already talked about that. So I'm not going to go back to that. Somebody asked if I can share the spreadsheet. Peter, can you write down, can you see the people in the chat? So it's Stella Ariti. I'm not sure if I'm saying the name correct. I'm sorry if I'm saying it wrong. You please write down her name. Stella, send us an email. If you had registered, we probably have your email. We'll be sure to send you the spreadsheet. I can also just write your name down here. Okay. If you have a question, please raise your hand. When is the next mentorship application? Good question. So we're going to launch this early in the summer. So look out in July or so. And again, if you are in this GIS sessions, you will eventually receive an email. You will get to know when the mentorship begins. So we'll send out a general call, and there will be more webinars eventually, and then you will know exactly how you can you will get selected. But again, there is still a few months between now and when we start the mentorship. Usually the mentorship is done in the fall, a few months before the application deadlines. Okay. If you take the research approach, does that mean you necessarily have become a lecturer? No, so a lecturer is just an academic title. It does not mean that you do research or not. But this academic title can mean different things in different countries. So for example, in the US, a lecturer is something who actually just teaches and is not a research professor, right? But I know in some African universities, you know, lecturer is an official title that most people will start with as teachers at universities. Okay. Is it advisable to reapply to the university with previous statement of purpose? No, it's not advisable. Somebody is asking if they can reapply to the same university with the same statement of purpose that they've used before, and the answer is no, it's not advisable. You cannot. So if you have to reapply, I'm assuming you did not get an admission, and so you cannot repeat the same thing and expect different results, right? So you must write a new statement and maybe try to improve on the one that you've written before, right? Sorry. So somebody said that they want help with how to navigate, how to navigate scientific literature. So I'm gonna get a vote on who else needs it, and then we can. Okay, so I think I have a lot of people who are interested. So we'll schedule a webinar on how to navigate scientific literature. Okay. One things I'm not gonna be able to do today, if you have a specific that's really specific to your area. So for example, if I'm in civil engineering, how do I do ABCD from now? Then maybe raise your hand now if you have time, but I'm gonna try to answer general questions now that are applicable to everyone, okay? Is it someone with a master's to write a PhD recommendation for me? Yes, if somebody with a master's is your lecturer, or you've done research with them, absolutely, they can write a recommendation letter for you. Again, as I mentioned, it's best if this person is in an authority or senior position to you, right? Because the people who are reading your applications are also in a senior position to you, if that makes sense. Papa, what's your question?
Yeah, thank you very much, Dr. Gihara, for this nice presentation. Nice to see you again.
Good to see you, and you're welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much. My name is Papa Janda, speaking from Ghana.
I think I remember you from last time.
Yes, please. I was on the call at the time. Yeah, please, concerning letters of recommendation, I think some of the schools categorically state that, they would prefer at least one of your recommendations should come from someone you've done research, like a supervisor in school, or somebody who has really mentored you, either in a lectureship position or something of that sort. But then, for example, if you also know that your supervisor is not that well versed in writing letters of recommendation, and then the school still states that they would prefer if someone like that write a recommendation, do you still think that compulsorily you should still kind of talk to the supervisor? Because I've realized in certain cases, some of the supervisors may not be necessarily good at generally writing recommendations. Probably they have just one template for everybody that comes to them.
Yeah.
And so in such situations, don't they kind of affect your application, even though the school states that you should do it? And that, do you still necessarily have to do that, or you can go to some other 3 lectures or 2 or more lectures in addition to the requirement of the school? How do you think you can go about that? Thank you very much.
Yeah, so that's unfortunate to begin with. And I've also heard of other stories where students have really been hurt by ineffective recommendation letters. So the first thing you want to do is to adhere to the requirements of the program to which you are applying. That is, if they ask for a recommendation from somebody who's mentored you in research and you do have that person, then I would do everything I can to get a recommendation from that person. But what if that person is not going to provide a good letter for you? Sometimes we have to be assertive, and that's important. It's common that as African students, we tend to feel less deserving, or you view your lecturers as people who are 1,000 miles above you. And so you always have to speak to them from a position of inferiority and do and say only what they say. And what they give you, take, and that's it. And I want you to start challenging that notion, because it hurts you, all of you. Yes, your lecturers are senior people to you, so you should respect them, as you should respect each other, regardless of the seniority position. However, you have to assert for what you want and advocate for yourself as much as you can. And so if you need to be a little more aggressive to get somebody to write a good recommendation letter for you, you should be. Good thing is that by being in a presentation like this, you've hopefully learned what could be included in an effective recommendation letter. What you can also do, if you feel like somebody may not write a good recommendation for you, you can provide them with a template. There are thousands of templates out there. If you visit the resources page on Afrisnet, you may find links, for example, to the online writing laboratory from Purdue University. There's other, even if you Google template recommendation letter for a PhD applicant, Google may give you some, right? And then modify that template so it reflects you and what you want to be said about you. And maybe politely and nicely share that template with the person writing your recommendation letter. And tell them, you know, after reading about this program that I'm applying to and what they require, I would really appreciate it. I know you are very busy, but I would really appreciate it if you could try and perhaps follow some guidelines that this template provides. I think it's very well written. Of course, you are writing the letter, so feel free, please, to write as best as you see fit. That's how you give the authority back to them without being remaining polite, but you're still asserting and advocating for yourself. But you have to do the work. You have to find the template. You can't just sit and hope that somebody is going to do everything for you, right? That's one thing you can do. The other thing you can do, if the university does not prevent you from seeing what the recommenders are writing on your behalf, you could ask to see what they are writing. And if you feel like it's not accurate enough, you can suggest some additions or changes. Now, if you are at a university where you feel like maybe this is a general problem, request a meeting with the chair of your department, the head of your department. Go tell them a lot of students here are trying to apply to graduate school, but I've talked to a few of them, and we feel like some lecturers may or could benefit from additional training on how to write effective recommendation letters for PhD applicants, right? If it's a general problem in your department, then advocate for yourselves again. Ask for change, okay? Papa, I hope that sort of answers your question. Just be assertive, be aggressive, remain polite, right? Remember, it may not always be the fault of this person writing your recommendation letter because, gosh, I've never taken a formal training on how to write a recommendation letter, and I've had to write some, right? I've just decided to go ahead and teach myself on how to do it. What if your lecturer has never learned how to write a recommendation letter? It's very possible. What if you're the first person they're going to recommend? So there are people too, and they're learning just as you are, right? So understanding their position and doing everything you can to help them do your best advocates definitely falls into your hands, right? Somebody is asking.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome, Papa. What the title of this lecture is going to be on YouTube, not exactly sure, but it's gonna have GIS 2 in it. Okay, so look for GIS 2 in the title. And if you are attending, if you open the presentation, you'll probably be able to see if it's the right one or not. Okay. It's taking me a while to read these questions in the chat. Bear with me. research paper in social behavior, basically. So, to pursue. I mean, don't waste time reading a lot of publications in a field that is not your field of interest, right? Unless you want to widen your general knowledge, of course. But if you're asking if you can switch from behavioral sciences to microbiology, it's always possible, right? As long as you can explain how your research experience in behavioral sciences has informed your interest to pursue a PhD in microbiology, then I think you can make a case. And you might also have acquired some research skills and attributes in your behavioral science area that will be transferable to your PhD research in microbiology. So in that case, you can definitely still make your case and prove that you are qualified. So is publication needed to show you can do research? The short answer is no. I did not have any publication when I was admitted into a PhD program, but I did have some research experience. Now, the more competitive the program, the more demanding they become. Of course, they can afford it. And so I've heard that some programs may really want to see a publication. Personally, I don't like that because also what's a publication, right? And how do you really judge the actual contribution to a publication is another question. I think research experience should be enough. And thankfully it is. In most cases, you don't really need a publication. I want to say though, it always looks good when you have a publication because then you can show that in addition to having experience in doing research, you also have experience in manuscript preparation. Because it's one thing to do experiments and collect data. It's another thing to prepare your data for publication and actually write the publication. So having that additional skill set is eventually going to be very helpful towards your case. Okay. I'm not sure if you feel like I'm missing a question you had. Please raise your hand. Tuyulahe. Tuyulahe, do you have a
Hello,
question?
good evening. Yeah,
How are you?
yeah, I'm good.
Good to see you. Your name looks Rwandan, so I assume you're in Rwanda.
Yeah, no, I'm from Rwanda, but currently I'm in India.
Oh, I see. I'm also from Rwanda,
Yeah.
by the way.
Oh, nice to meet you.
Good to meet you. What's your
Yeah,
question?
even though I saw your name, it's Muhira, maybe, I think.
Yes, Muhire is also my name. That's correct.
Yeah, I question was said this guy is from Rwanda, maybe he might be from Rwanda. Yeah. Yeah, I'm very happy that you are from Rwanda. See, it's been like 2 years attending this kind of webinar, but I'm happy that I found Rwandan artist. Yeah. So like my question is the same question. I'm the one who asked that question from that question you did in the chat.
Which
So
one
actually, yeah,
specifically?
that of publication in social sciences.
So you have a publication already in a different field.
Yeah, I'm doing biotechnology. It's life science.
Mm-hmm.
So during my academic in my second year, I said, okay, I'm willing to go for research, but I didn't have that much skills in the field. So I decided, let me be doing on social behavior, behavioral science. And then I completed, and my publication has been accepted for publication to be this soon. So even though I'm doing another research based on CRISPR-Cas9, it's in the field already, but I'm not yet sure when this article can be published. Some are under review. So I'm questioning, like, as I'm graduating next year in April, but I'm planning to start my application maybe in this year in nearby October, November, like that.
Yes, you should. So you're doing a master's now?
No, I'm doing BTech.
Okay.
Yeah. So I was thinking like I can showcase my research experience through this research I'm doing in the field, but like mentioning this kind of publication also as well. Do you think like it's anything they can contribute?
One second to you, but I'll come back to you in a second. So if you're in the waiting room and I can't see your name, I'm sorry, I can't really admit you into the meeting. So if your name is iPhone or iPhone something, I'm sorry. I'm not going to, I have to see your name to make sure you're a real person.
Yeah.
That's at least the only leverage I have. Okay, that's your question. It's a good question. So I understand that at some point you have to jump on any research project you have because that's all that's available to you, right? And so remember when I said that you also have to show your proven motivation, right?
Yeah.
So participating in a research project shows more than research interest about you, right? It shows motivation.
Yeah.
It shows self initiative, right? You took the initiative to participate in this research project. So it may not have been required for your core curriculum. So the fact that you went out and did that is very important. Plus, there is a lot of similarity in research, regardless of the field, right? So if you are doing research in social sciences, most likely you had a specific method to follow, right?
Yeah.
Maybe you had a hypothesis. You collected data, you analyzed the data, and then you organized them for publication. So all these are skills, again, that are transferable to most other research areas, right? And so in that case, it's about how you tell your story, right? It's important to understand that graduate school application is very much about telling a story, right? And really showing people how your interest developed over time and how you took advantage of the opportunities that were available to you. And so they are not going to spend much time on your publication, whether it's published or in review, doesn't matter, because it's not directly related to what you are doing, but they're going to consider it and it's going to be a good addition on your profile because it's a research exercise, right? And so in addition to that, you probably didn't do the research alone. You were working with other people, right? And so you've gained some interpersonal skills, how to communicate with other researchers effectively to test the research hypothesis and collect data and publish, right? So all those are good skills to learn that you can definitely write about in your personal statement. And then what I would maybe try and talk about in your case is to try and show if there is any logic transition from social sciences to biochemistry, then you would also try and write that out in your statement, right? Again, I'm glad you asked this question because this shows the importance of the personal statement, right? You cannot indicate that on your CV, right? But that statement gives you a chance now to give meaning to your skills and explain them in the way that you want to say them that speaks to your targeted audience. Okay? So I hope that answers your question. And again, keep in touch when the mentorship comes. We can help you write those things out. Otherwise, just try and do as well as you can in your current program, okay?
Thank you, dear. I'm
You're
very
welcome.
happy that so you are from Rwanda.
Same here. Thank you.
Thank you.
How many mentees are assigned to an Afrisnet mentor, and what is the way forward for someone interested in becoming an Afrisnet mentor? Oh, so if you want to be a mentor, please shoot us an email, okay? I showed our email earlier, but I'm gonna put it in the chat again. So it's info@afrisnet.org. Should make sure this goes to everyone. So I've put the email in the chat, so please reach out to us. We will definitely add you to our list of mentor. And how many mentees do you take depends on your capacity. We have people who take one. We've had people who take as many as 20 or more. It depends on how many you can handle. I will take maybe 1 or 2 more questions and we can close for today. If there are no other questions, I want to thank everyone again for joining. It's been a great pleasure to see some of you who attended last time and some new faces. Papa, I see your hand is still up. There is no other questions. So if you have a second one, you can ask it maybe before I close the meeting.
Yes, please. I have a question.
Sure.
Okay. Okay. Thank you for answering my earlier question. That was really helpful.
I'm glad.
Yeah. Okay. Please, I wanted to ask this question concerning umbrella program.
Umbrella program.
Yes, programs that kind of have they admit something like student into a program like biomedical sciences, but then under the biomedical science, you have something like cancer biology, immunology, biochemistry, several other programs. So it's kind of like when you apply to such programs, you don't really apply to one discipline or so, but then you apply to the graduate school, you'll be able to now define where you want to be. With such programs, most of the time, defining your research interests becomes a little bit of a challenge to me. For example, I had an interest in one professor who was into pulmonary hypertension, lung disease, and then pulmonary hypertension, who was with the biochemistry department. And then at the same time, I was fascinated with one other professor whose work was into immunology, and then he was into immunotherapy. Trying to define my research interest and then just opposing these two alongside. And mostly they will ask you to kind of state 3 professors explaining why you like their research was kind of a challenge to me. I really didn't know how to go about that, to tell the committee that, well, I'm interested in biochemistry, at the same time I'm interested in immunology, or I'm interested in a professor who is with the biochemistry department. At the same time, I'm interested in another who is with the immunology department. I felt like they might think I really don't know what I'm about and I'm really not defined with my interest per se. So I wanted to find out how best we can go about that in terms of explaining our interest with such programs. Thank you.
Yeah. So the starting point is that you want to make sure yourself that you're not still divided in your interests, right? So there's that self-discovery journey that I encourage each one of you to begin now to really define your research interests. Now, you can do biochemistry in immunology, right? The names of these programs are meant to be as general guides or definitions of what the programs focus on. But what really matters is the actual research that the professor is doing. So more than anything else, you need to show the committee that you know about that research and explain how that research relates to your interest. It doesn't matter the affiliation of the professor, as long as that professor is affiliated to the umbrella program that you are applying to. Even if you are applying to an umbrella program, you should still define your interest as specific as possible, because the admission committee is going to try and see if your interests do align with the programs of their umbrella program, and if there is any laboratory that would match your research interests. And so if your interests are not related in any way, then that's a question, that's a problem. And I think you want to speak to your Afrisnet mentor in that case and see if they can help guide you on how to write that. Or that means that maybe you should apply to a different graduate program instead of trying to put 2 laboratories that are really different in their focus areas in your application. That might mean that you need to apply to a different program, maybe even at a different university. So that's something that you have to judge, and if you need some guide, we would definitely be happy to talk with you on specific cases and see how best to navigate that. So I hope that sort of answers your question. But the point is that you have to be clear in your interest, make sure you're convinced about your interest, and make sure that you can relate them to the labs that you are interested in. Definitely, that's very important.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you. Thank
You're
you very
welcome.
much.
Sure. Derek, what's your question?
Yeah, thanks, Doctor, for the amazing presentation and also the participants. So I have like two
Welcome.
questions. The first one, what it is as the research experience? Do I have to maybe participate in a certain stage of research, maybe like a data collection, data analysis, or do I have to have a full research paper or publication out there? The second one is for the case of a graduate program like a master's, do I need to have, is it a must to have a research experience, or for my case, like maybe I have a practical experience in the field? So in that case, they have to have both, or either of them can do for me.
Yeah. The first question is very good. To what stage in a research project or in a research exercise do I participate to show that I have research experience? Really, it does not matter what stage you participate in. The more steps you participate in, the better. And I say, if you are in a research project right now and they only want you to collect data, you should be a little more assertive and a little more aggressive and ask if you can participate in more, right? The more, the better. But also, I think, in my opinion, what matters is that you can describe the project that you are working on.
Okay.
And specifically detail your participation in that project. What do I mean by that? What is the research question that you're trying to answer in this research project? What is the hypothesis? Okay. What are the methods that are being used in this research project? What is expected as a result? What did you actually find as a result? Publication is another thing. You may participate in publication. Okay. You may even participate in a research project that completely fails, right? If you've done research, you know that we fail a lot in research, and that's normal, right? But what did you learn through that failure, right? So when I talk about the scientific research in that webinar, maybe I will also try to describe what research is. It feels like maybe we can also touch on that. What is a research process, right? As generally accepted, what is it? And what was your participation in that process? More importantly, what effect did your participation have on both your interests and your qualifications as an aspiring researcher?
Okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. And again, I don't really have time to dwell too much on any single question, and I feel like I could talk about each one of them for an hour. We've already been here for more than 2 hours, almost 3 hours. But please stay with Afrisnet, right? And if you have questions that you feel like need more time, we have mentors that you could sit down in a Zoom meeting and ask more about your specific case, right? And especially when that mentorship period comes, eventually all your questions will be answered as best as we can, okay? The second question was, I'm afraid I'm forgetting it. Quickly remind me, please.
It was for an undergraduate program, like for master's. Do I need the both? Do I need either research experience?
Yeah, so I think generally for a master's, we've seen students get into master's programs without elaborate research experience. But if your master's program entails research, then it's important that you at least describe your practical experience in a laboratory setting. So maybe you didn't work on a specific research project, but you took courses that also had laboratory sessions associated with them, right? And maybe in those courses, you did some practical exercises that you can describe and explain how that experience would help you as a master's student. Okay. Okay. So I think we have many more questions. Okay, so let's do this. If you have questions that I did not get to answer, because unfortunately for the interest of time, I think we need to stop. Please go ahead and send your question to that email. Identify yourself, indicate that you participated in GIS2 today, and I will personally make sure that I answer your question in that email. And if I feel like we need an additional meeting for me to provide more explanation, I will try and schedule a one-on-one Zoom meeting with you. But unfortunately for now, I think we have to close the meeting. It's always a great pleasure to see you all through these webinars. As I've said it before, I'm also from Africa. I've been where you are. I understand your drive and your burning passion. I know very much how you're suffering from the lack of research experience and research access, but what you are doing is right. Keep trying, keep knocking on doors. Eventually one of them will open. I'm yet to see a student who has tried and tried and did not get a chance. That does not tend to be the case. If you keep on trying, eventually you'll get where you want to be. And remember, I'm not the only one at Afrisnet. It's an entire network that includes many, many PhD students from Africa who maybe last year or 2 years ago were exactly where you are now. Now they are PhD students in the US, in Canada, in China, in Europe, and elsewhere. And they are here to help, okay? So get into the network, stay engaged, ask questions. Again, we'll do our best to help you. So I wish you all well, wherever you are. For most of you, it's nighttime, so good night. Have a great evening. Again, this webinar will be posted on YouTube if you want to watch it again. And if you have any specific questions, reach out. If you want to help Afrisnet volunteer and help us mentor more students, please also reach out. And with that, I will say bye now, and I will see you all at future Afrisnet webinars.